Hello, my name is Daniel, and this is the Engineering Success Podcast, episode 42. Hope you guys are doing good this week. I'm doing great because yet again, for the third week or fourth week in a row, we have a guest. Carla Minett is going to be our guest, but before I introduce her, we have some shout outs to do. So, shout out to our top tier supporters. Shout out to John Ott. Thank you so much for your support of the podcast. You too can be shouted out at the beginning of every single episode of the podcast. But if you support us on Spotify for podcasters or on Patreon, the links are in the description box of the way that you're consuming this down below, either on YouTube or on your favorite preferred podcast provider. But thank you, John Ott, for supporting the podcast. I really appreciate it. Your support allows me to pay for my hosting for my website, allows me to pay for my subscriptions to advertise the podcast, and it also allows me to afford the equipment and the email address and all that kind of stuff that goes along with the podcast. And also just helps encourage me and remind me that, yes, I need to publish an episode. So thank you, John. You can support him. You can join him by also becoming a top tier supporter, and you'll also get a shout out on our website as well. You'll get to live on our front page at www.engringsuccess.com. Also, if you become a top tier supporter, I have ordered stickers. So, John, you will be getting one in the mail. But if you join John as a top tier supporter and you send me your address to my email at daniel@engringsuccess.com, daniel@engineeringsuccess.com, you will receive a sticker. So the sticker is just the logo and it has my @ symbol on it. It's pretty cool. It's like a white sticker. So definitely a reason to support the podcast. And if you want, so I'll send you the sticker and I'll also send you a nice little thank you note for supporting the podcast. Okay, so let's preview the interview. Also, for those of you that are tracking, we're on week 34 of the pregnancy, so 6 weeks to go. So, anyways, Minett is Carla Minett. Sorry, Carla. Carla Minett is our guest this week. She is an engineer, a degreed mechanical engineer, just like me, and is the founder of Minett Consulting and Engineers to Leaders. She was born in Peru. We'll talk more about that, and moved to the U.S. in her late teens. From her experience growing up in an economically polarized country, she realized the difference between those who radically improved their lives and those who didn't. And the difference was having access to the right resources and opportunities. So, embracing these resources, she found a pathway to success, becoming an engineer and an emerging leader, especially through her experience through a rotational program, which she helps companies build now as part of her consultancy. So, we're going to talk about her career progression, lessons learned along the way, pivotal moments, and also what she does now with Minett Consulting, because it's a phenomenal interview. So, stay tuned, listen up, and I know you'll enjoy it. Hopefully, you'll get an ad here, but looks like Spotify has taken them away from me temporarily. But if we get more listeners, you should hear an ad right after the beep. Beep. Hi,
Yeah.
Carla. How you doing today?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Well, thank you for hopping on the podcast. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here today.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to connect on the Podcasters Connect group. I'll be honest, I was really, really not expecting much whenever I posted on there, reaching out for people to come on the podcast. But I am
Mhm.
so excited that you and others reached out, and I think that it's just going to be such a wonderful fit.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm excited to hear about what you're doing as well, and just to see the engineering community, want to step to the plate and share and be able to help others. So it's exciting.
Yeah. So what people will have heard before we started the podcast is I'll give a lovely interview about your background, but one thing that I probably will forget to mention is that you have had kind of a unique journey into the engineering profession. And that kind of started, well, at least in the US, that is. So you actually started your life not in the US. You immigrated to the US from Peru in your teenage years. So how was that for you?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Peru, and then I came to the US around maybe 18 years old. Um, What do you want to know? I mean, I went to high school here, maybe a couple of years just to be able to learn English and
Yeah.
history, but I had already graduated in Peru from high
Oh wow.
school. So it was just an opportunity to get immersed and be able to get to meet people and be able to practice the language too, because I didn't learn English until maybe 1 month before I moved to the States.
Wow.
So all of my learning really was immersive, hands on.
So was that when in that trend in that part of your life did you really get your interest in engineering? Was it whenever you were really little, or did it kind of come after you got to the US?
So looking back, I think that I was always intrigued by just mechanical, objects, electronics, and things like that. I always wanted to take things apart and see how they worked and how they came together. But I also had a bunch of other interests, so it never really stood out to me that that is something that I wanted to pursue. So even once I came to the U.S., I did not pursue engineering initially. I
Really?
thought about other options such as like fashion and merchandising, and thankfully that didn't work out because I ended up, going for engineering. But yeah, it was more of a I ended up there. I was already taking the classes that
Yeah.
other engineering students were taking. And once I found that out, I was just like, okay, so I guess might as well do that. And I loved it. I just like I said, I was taking classes that I enjoyed and that I was passionate about, and I just happened to discover that they were engineering classes. So.
Yeah. So was this whenever you were in college at Old Dominion?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I went to a community college first for the first
Okay.
couple of years, and then I went to ODU for the last two to complete my bachelor's, and
Mhm.
then I did my master's degree also at Old Dominion.
Yeah. So why did you choose Old Dominion? What stood out about that for you?
Well, when I first moved to the US, I lived in Connecticut. I was there for a couple of years, and coming from a country where it's warm all year round, I had to get away. So
Yeah.
I chose Virginia because it was kind of a nice in between. You still had winters and you still had summers. So, and then I found out about Old Dominion University, and they had a great engineering program. I also found out about the community college in Virginia Beach and how accessible it was for people who started in community college to transition into a 4-year degree. So it was just having that access and the ability to do that that drove me to move into Virginia and go here to school.
Yeah, and you liked it so much that you stayed for a master's from looking at your LinkedIn. So why a
Yeah.
master's and why in design and manufacture?
So when I graduated with my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, I felt
Hmm.
like I was just barely getting my feet wet. Like I didn't know enough to go out in the world and say, I'm a mechanical engineer, I know what I'm doing. So I decided to go for my mechanical engineering master's degree so that I can continue to learn more and continue to take some more advanced classes on the subject. And it was very exciting. I loved it.
Yeah. So then you did the master's, but why design and manufacture? Was there anything about that niche that was just super exciting to you, or?
Yeah, yeah, maybe I think just the thought of being able to create anything
Mhm.
out of nothing, from concept to actually manufacturing. I mean, that sounds amazing to me. It's like, okay, this is in your head today. You put it on paper, you design it, and then all the other pieces that come together, eventually you're able to touch it. Being able to touch, have a
Mhm.
tangible outcome or product. That sounds exciting to me. And also just the classes that I took had to do with asking questions and getting feedback, customer feedback, in order to improve products.
Mhm.
And that was very exciting to me as well. So I guess I enjoyed the idea of more of an overall well-rounded process and understanding the whole process as a whole, seeing the big picture, and being able to bring something from beginning to end. So
Yeah, and I think those are wonderful reasons to go into it. And looking at your career timeline, I saw that you worked for a shipbuilder, so I imagine you got to apply some of those manufacturing uh, and design kind of concepts that you learned in your master's as well.
Yeah, well, more than anything, I feel like those concepts can be translated into real life
Hmm.
because when you're trying to do a good job at no matter what it is, you need to take into account the customer feedback. You need to take into account, multiple, like all the stakeholders feedback to be able to truly make a product or, or provide a service that is wanted and that it is what people are expecting. So I think that in the manufacturing industry, yeah, that proves true within the actual facilities and the work that you do there. But just in anything, I feel like in anything else that you do in life, even with just, at home or your personal life, it's applying those concepts really go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I feel like engineers make good partners. I feel like we're very organized. We keep track of things. I think we run a pretty
Spreadsheets
good,
for
yeah,
everything.
spreadsheets, budgets, run a good, I feel like handy. I think engineers make the best housemates. I think we definitely know how to keep a house in order as long as our work life is not just completely taking over. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I like to be able to touch and know what I'm making is right.
Yeah, no, I am the
So
same way. So we talked a little bit about your career, but what I'd like to do is kind of walk through your career progression, and then along the way, if you want to stop me at any of these roles, we have some other questions we're going to ask just generally about your career
sure.
later, but I'd love to kind of just walk through your career. So first out of school, your first job, you're a project manager slash engineering intern with City of Norfolk. So you worked for
Yes.
your city, and then after that, you went to work for ACOM, which I believe is a large contractor, right?
Yeah, they're an A&E company. Yes, they work on design, architecture and engineering design for I believe it was government buildings.
Yeah. Cool. And then after that, then you we worked for that shipbuilder, Newport News Shipbuilding.
Hmm.
And then after that, you worked in program management for them as well. And then
Hmm.
now you are the founder and CEO of your own leadership development consulting company. So really a really cool career progression. I wonder, what was your experience like working for a city?
For the city of Norfolk.
Yeah.
It was my first internship and it was a great experience. I had an amazing mentor, and perhaps that was my first exposure to working with a mentor or even knowing what a mentor is like. Some of the best, um, I guess, lessons that I took throughout my career and I still take with me came from my mentor that was my manager at the time. So it was great, just a great experience. He was an amazing person, and he showed me that he valued me. He created projects that were meaningful for me to learn from. He, elevated me, built me up. He would take me, on the side to see the projects in person, to talk with the customers, and it was just a great experience all around. So it was amazing.
Yeah, I think that those internships are just so wonderful. I same thing. There were so many lessons that I learned in my first ever internship that I didn't even realize I was learning in the moment about professionalism and just how to be a professional as
Hmm.
well and how to work. And I think that it's just so valuable to have those internships. And
Absolutely.
and it's really cool that you got to work for a city or a municipality. I'm wondering what was the transition like for you then going to work for a contractor or consultant after that? Was it a noticeable change in the way that the work environment functioned, or was it pretty similar?
Yeah, so the city was definitely a different work environment than at a A&E firm.
Yeah.
I went to work for AECOM. It was so originally when I worked for the city of Norfolk, we had worked already with I had worked with small contractors that design and install HVAC systems per se for our buildings. So when I went to work for AECOM, it was almost and I'm not gonna say an easier transition, just understanding the big
Hmm.
picture and how they relate to the customer and what the relationships are. But with AECOM, it was more of an office type environment. You had your cubicles, you had their offices, you had the project managers, you had the engineers, mechanical engineering department. Then you had your
Hmm.
electrical engineering department, and then and the project managers were a separate department. Then you had your architecture department. So it was definitely a different layout. Again, when I was in the city of Norfolk, I worked very closely with my manager, and that's probably as much as I interacted with any of the other departments at the time
Hmm.
in the city of Norfolk. But when I worked at AECOM, there were times where we would have to make sure that we're integrating, that our work it's in line with what the other departments were doing. So
Yeah.
there was a need more for cross collaboration, I guess, amongst the departments there.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand whenever they work for a contractor or a consultant like that, right? They're definitely as you go up in your roles and you get more involved, the more cross discipline that you get and the more
Hmm.
interfaces you get with other departments. I'm really curious though,
Hmm.
how did you switch from AECOM to then moving into Newport News Shipbuilding? I assume that's a shipbuilding company from the name, but maybe
Yes, it
I'm
is.
mislabeling them. I'm curious how you
No, you
made that
got it.
switch. Yeah, thank good.
Um,
Thank you.
how I transitioned into it,
Yeah, well, why
into
did you
that
go from
company.
it's like a completely different industry, right?
Yes, it is. So, all right. At the time when I was working for AECOM, I was a U.S. Resident.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the differences between like a U.S. resident versus a U.S. citizen when it comes to immigrants. So a U.S. resident is a person that holds a green card and that is
Yeah.
able to work in all the different job functions that any U.S. citizen could, except for working for the government or run
Hmm.
for office, I believe. It's been a while now, so I'm trying to remember. And then by the time I was in AECOM, I got my citizenship. I applied for the U.S. citizenship. I got, I had already my the process of legalization and the process of becoming a U.S. citizen going. So I became a U.S. citizen sometime around that time. And with becoming a U.S. citizen, I became I qualified for working for the government and a government contractor, which is the Newport Shipbuilding. So
Okay.
so that's one side of things. And I know you and I were talking about how things just align in some unexpected way. So what happened to with AECOM is at the time AECOM had a huge downsizing of their Virginia Beach office. So
Oh.
they essentially did away with the like the architectural department and the mechanical engineering department, and maybe they kept a couple of people from each, and then they ended up moving to another location, and then they ended up using because they are like I believe they were a global company at the time. They were able to replace the resources that they let go of with by using people from other locations that they had, like Roanoke, for example.
Hmm.
So they had that massive layoff, and then sometime around that time too, I became a U.S. citizen. So then I qualified to apply for this job, and I always thought that working for helping the government, helping our Navy was one of the most exciting jobs and most honorable things that I could do. I mean, with me having come from a different country and going all the way to becoming a U.S. citizen,
Uh-huh.
so it's not something that fell in my lap per se. It's something that I had to make the conscious choice to do, and whether it's something I wanted or not. So just being able to do that. it felt good to me. Yeah. So anyway, so I applied for the shipyard, and I was, I was given an offer, and like I was saying, things kind of align. I ended up having a quite a good pay bump in getting that job.
Nice.
So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that is a massive story of accomplishment and
Sorry, you might have to
resilience for
crop a
you.
little bit.
No, 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 that was perfect. No, I have a friend that is in that process right now. And it makes sense that I think it's 2 years that you get your first. I think your first work visa out of coming out of school. I think it's approximately 2 years is what he was saying. I think he got a year and then he got another year for extension
It's a
kind of
long
automatically.
process.
And then, yeah, it's an
Yes,
extremely long process. So
it's
the
a long
fact that
process.
you overcame that and you're in this, you were able to get your citizenship is a phenomenal accomplishment in its own right,
I
alongside
appreciate it.
your career development. That's so cool, and I think that it's very beneficial for the audience to understand, especially that I do have a lot of people that are in the situation that you're in, to know that
Mhm.
there is another end, there is success on the other side of that, and you can get through that process. So thank you
It
for
all
sharing that
it
story.
all Sure. It all works out at the right time, I feel. As much as it's hard in the beginning, because when things take a long time, it could be hard to understand, but it just, there's perfect timing for everything. I feel like, with just I became a citizen, and I was able to get a job right when I needed it, and it was, an increase in pay salary as well. So it all worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, and you worked there for a really long time. It looks like
Hmm.
you had like a what, a 12 uh 15
Something like that.
15
Something
year
like 12
career.
or something like that.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Hmm.
And then now you're here. Now you're the founder and CEO of your own a leadership and development consulting company. So with that in mind, I know that the main focus of this podcast is professional development, and I know that it's a big focus for you. And I won't name
Hmm.
employers. You can make that choice if you want. But I know that early on in your career, you almost actually left one of your employers because they didn't have professional development opportunities for you. Can you tell us more about what that experience was like for you and how you overcame that and kind
Yes.
of charted your own story?
Yeah, sure. So I was working for an organization where I just in early in my career, I felt like I needed to. I just got this bug where I was just so curious, and I wanted to see how much more I can do with my degree. I had just gone to school, I just graduated from a master's degree. It was I had put a lot of work into it, and I was just very curious to see, what else can I do out there? What more is there for me to do? And where I was currently working, there were just not opportunities for that in the, I guess, micro group that I was in.
Hmm.
So it and later on, I realized that I wasn't the only one, actually. There were many of my peers who felt the same way as well. And they also got to a point where they wondered, is there more out there for me? Is there more I can do? Because they felt like they were perhaps being like limited. Their growth and development was limited where they were.
Hmm.
So and then just again another thing, a matter of time, being in the right place, at the right time with the right people. One of those things happened where I overheard about this rotational program in the same company, and there was a lot of risk to be taken because it was a new sort kind of a new program. There were no guarantees. If you join the program, you will go and explore a series of different departments.
Hmm.
There was no guarantees that you will get a promotion. If you were up for a promotion at a certain time in your career. And there were no guarantees that you will get you will land a new job there, or a series of things. So I jumped at the opportunity of joining the program, and that was like one of the best decisions I made in my career. So, and that's how that all ends up tying into what I do now and why I do what I do now, because that program retained me for that long, it changed everything for me and for my peers as well, who were at one point considering, maybe leaving the company to get to explore those other options out there. Now
Mhm.
we didn't have to leave the company to explore those options. Now we can explore them within, our own, organization, our own company. So um, that was just a wonderful experience. It put me out there, and I put myself out there. I got to explore different areas of, of interest. I
Mhm.
got to run into a lot of people in the company that I would have never had access to, senior leaders that would take me under their wing per se, and just sit down with me and have conversations. And I was able to meet some wonderful people that definitely helped shape my career. And it was definitely a pivotal moment in my career, being able to get out there and really be exposed to other leadership styles, other mentors, other even microcultures in the organization. And then by the end of the program, just getting to see what happened to me and what happened to my peers. That was there was no more truth than that. It didn't get more real than that. It's just like, wow, this really is how we can grow and develop, and how we can find what we're truly passionate about, and how we can um, just expand and, beyond our current capabilities. So
Yeah, that is really cool. Was it a longer rotational program? About how long were you rotating for?
So the program was initially only for 2 years, and it's actually traditionally only for 2 years. And you go to different or to different stops for maybe 6 months at a time. But my rotation was different because how do I explain it? So it, it it was different. So in the middle of my rotation, maybe towards the beginning, I got pregnant. I had my
Oh,
first son. So
yay!
I stepped away for maybe a few months. And immediately after, when I was ready to come back, they took me back in. So I was able to rejoin the program. So I had that stretch right there. But aside from that, also, in because of the development that I was experiencing during my rotations, I and a few other peers from the program were selected to do this special project. So we were pulled out from a
Hmm.
rotation we had just started to work on this special project for our VP at the time.
Hmm.
So we did that for a couple of months. It was a quick turnaround project. So we did that for a couple of months, and then we were put back into another rotation of our choice. And then when I was on that rotation, uh, it became almost like a nature. Like it was every rotation was so different, and every time I feel like I got better
Hmm.
at, okay, I got the hang of this. I know how to do it. I'm gonna hit the ground running from the start. And so I had more success each time, I feel like. So and then on my last rotation, because I was able to land a full-time position with a promotion at one of the program management program offices, I ended up having to cut that rotation short. So that's what I'm saying. It wasn't really, a normal time frame. Um, I got kind of like an extra rotation in there. Then I had a break in there, and I also ended up cutting one of them shorter because the company decided they needed me more in this in my new job, my new role in that new program office. So I had to wrap the other one up quickly. So
Yeah. Not only did you have a really good rotational experience, but as a function of the rotational experience, you were able to land in a role after post rotation that you really enjoyed and found very fulfilling. Would you attribute that mostly to the fact that you were able to rotate through and see so many different things?
absolutely. Yeah, there is no way. There is no way, I know for sure, had I stayed in the department I was in, that I would have been able to accomplish any of that. There's no way. The reason I did was because I was put in front, I gained visibility. I got out there literally and physically. So I was seen by other senior leaders of the company who, saw potential and
Hmm.
provide opportunities, that if you don't put yourself out there, you don't know they're there. So
Yeah.
and certainly, I mean, coming from being an engineer to working in a program management office, it is not something that you can just transition to. um, you know so definitely my the experience that I gained during my rotations in the program office, and all these different projects, it definitely set me up for that. I know for a fact that when I had the interview to get in that position in the program management office, the reason they wanted me was because of my previous experience in the other program offices.
Yeah. That makes sense. So looking back at this, were there any particular moments that or accomplishments that really kind of stood out for you as you were going through these rotations that really just helped you stand out like that? Were there any things that you're just particularly proud of?
um oh yeah, sure. So one of them would be, um, the director of one of the organizations I was in. She saw potential and she recommended, to my boss at the time, that I apply for the Emerging Leaders program.
Mhm.
So that, again, that's an opportunity I would have never gotten, I know for sure, from where I was. So I was able to join these I guess what you would call invitation only, leadership development program. And it was a great experience. I got to meet other people, other peers that were also in that program, trying to do good, trying to do our best, in the company. That's one of them. Another thing would be probably that special project.
Yeah.
When our VP came, well, she didn't physically come, but she sent somebody, and say, effective immediately, we need you guys, we need this group of people to work on this special project,
Mhm.
and you have 2.5 months to turn it around.
Yeah.
It really that was flattering as well. It makes you feel like all the work that I'm doing, it gets seen and it gets appreciated. And this is why we're getting this opportunity. So that was nice as well. And then the other point in time was too, when I was in the program management office, and I was able to, and I had, like, I think one of the VPs, in that organization, put in a good word for me to get an interview, to get that full time position in the other program management office. That was very nice too. And again, that's just, the different people that saw potential in me that I would have never been exposed to. So, and again, I did have to put in the work. So that's why I'm proud of it as well.
Yeah, and you should be. And so I would take to gander that the most probably one of the most pivotal, if not the most pivotal moments in your career was getting into that leadership rotational program, and it's honestly probably why you do what you do now. And we'll talk more about that later. But looking back, are there any things you wish you had done differently, or are you just kind of when you look back, you just like say, I wouldn't change a thing. That was awesome. It's been a perfect journey.
Um, there was, I think it's the journey though, because the
Yeah.
things that I would have done differently, I did. I
Yeah.
had the chance to do them, and that was
Hmm.
the neat thing, and that's what excites me about what I do now with my business, is that I got to experience what it is like to not know what I'm doing when
Yeah.
I got into those rotations.
Yeah.
You're not handed anything. So,
Mhm.
and when you're brand new, it is what you get out of what you put into it is what you get out of it. It truly is that way. So, the first time around, you do your best. You have this opportunity. You're on a time crunch. You only have 6 months. There's already a lot of, reluctancy in the community just to take a rotator on, because they could think that you're wasting their time. Why are they going to train you when you're only there for 6 months and then you're going to get up and leave?
Yeah.
So, just there's that knowing that you have to make it count, and that you have to leave a long lasting impression and value for the people around you, and honor those people that you're there to serve when you're in that department. So, just it was a learning journey the first time around, knowing all that but not knowing how to do it. It was hard. Then at the same time, I was pregnant at the same time, so then you add another variable in there. Now, I have to prepare for having a child and maybe maternity leave and all that stuff. So, but I feel like, again, it all happened in the right timing, because that was the beginning of my rotations. It was when I was going to step away for my maternity leave.
Hmm.
um, and I got to learn and see how things work and get my feet wet. But every rotation after, it just got so much better and better. And just because I'm like, okay, I know what to do now with that, and the next time around, I was ahead of the game. The next
Hmm.
time around, I was calling people, I was coming to talk to them before, I was onboarding myself. I was
Yeah.
interviewing the people that were going to take me on. And it's a lot of more proactive. It
Yeah.
became a lot more proactive once I knew, okay, now I know this works, this is what I need to be doing. So then I would do it, even earlier on. And then every other subsequent one, it just, got better and better, because and that proactiveness started to get noticed. And I really think that that's why then mentors started to open doors for me, per se.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I like how you appreciate your journey so much because it did lead you to where you are now. So I'm really curious. We've hinted at it a lot, but let's talk about what you do now. So you run your own consultancy,
yes,
Minett Consulting LLC.
yes,
I practiced pronouncing the name beforehand, but give me please forgive me.
it's okay. No, you're
Yeah.
good.
So what is Minette Consulting and what do you guys do and who do y'all do things for?
All right. So Minute Consultant is a small women-owned, minority-owned business, certified as such.
Yeah.
And my focus is helping engineering organizations develop their emerging leaders. And as we talked about during this podcast, I got to experience a lot of what not to do and what to do to be able to have more successful development experiences, and to accelerate the development as well. Like I mentioned before, my rotations started to get shorter, and because of different reasons, so I had to really turn things around a lot quicker. And it is possible, if there is preparation, if there is awareness, and there's tools that we can use to turn things around a lot faster, to be more effective, and to really accelerate one's development. So I use the same things that I used myself, and also just from experiencing a program on the early stages too. We got to see a lot of what was trial and error, and now we have the knowledge of what works for those who are actually going through the journey.
Mm.
So it's, again, we go back to the whole manufacturing process, and the understanding the customer journey, in this case understanding the engineer's journey. And that's what I feel is special about my company, is that I am not coming from an HR perspective. I am not coming from a company leader, senior leader perspective. I'm
Mm.
bringing in the perspective of the person who's actually going through these experiences, who
Mm.
has been through what works and what doesn't, and actually came up, identified the opportunities and gaps, and created the opportunities to and the tools to help make these experiences a lot more effective. So yeah, I also, another reason that I'm very passionate about this is because when I was before I went out there and I decided to join this journey, I didn't know that there were so many senior leaders out there that were looking for people like me, that were looking for, emerging leaders that they could pass down the knowledge to, and to show them around, and to secure the future of the company. They're out there, and they want to connect with these engineers. They really do. But a lot
Mhm.
of us, unless we put ourselves out there, don't know about this. And just the thought of a missed opportunity like that, it makes me, get up and be and go out there and want to facilitate these opportunities for more engineers that want to make a difference and that want to become, the high potential leaders, and really help connect those, bridge that gap, connect those senior leaders who are looking for them with those engineers who are hungry for development like I was, and put them
Yeah.
together and just have them, here you are. And then, just facilitate that program that I built to help them become that high potential leaders that I know many can be.
Yeah. So what you have definitely the experience and the background and going through those programs and now working with these organizations now um, to to have those conversations and to help companies with trying to build these programs. So I wonder if you could just give us a few, not your entire philosophy, but a few insights into what are some characteristics of really successful leadership programs that companies put
Yeah.
together.
Sure, no, no problem. So, to me, from my experience and from what I observed, also happened to peers, and from just I'm constantly talking in the engineering community as well, just listening and understanding where we come from, and what the senior leaders, need from emerging leaders. I feel like in order to have an effective and successful leadership development program, particularly for developing emerging engineering leaders, a program has to provide work environments that are experiential, immersive,
Hmm.
rotational, and collaborative.
Yeah.
So that would be, I guess, to answer your question, that this, I guess, the secret sauce of what I believe will make an effective leadership development program for the emerging engineering leaders. Experiential, because I feel like you can't have experience without getting experience. So at one point, you have to be given the opportunity to go through experiences in order to develop that
Yeah.
resume. So that's essential. Immersive, because as we talked about, my entire life has been all about learning by immersion. Whether that's with English or it's with,
Uh,
just being thrown out there in different departments and just, sink or swim. It gives you a sense of accountability and ownership for your work that you don't get when you are first starting out at a college and you're, in your desk, just kind of like not knowing what how to drive the company forward. You're just waiting for leadership and direction. When
yeah.
you put yourself out there by immersion, um, it's your baby, and it's your name, and you're responsible for it, and you have no choice but to make it work. So that's why I believe that immersive experiences are very important to accelerate the development of emerging leaders, as well as rotational. We talked about rotational experiences, and just the opportunity to create a network that is outside of where you work, outside of your break those silos in working, and really expanding to collaborations. And that's where it ties back to collaborative work environments. Being able to, I feel like a leader needs to be able to understand working effectively with others, needs to be
Mhm.
able to leverage emotional intelligence to be able to work effectively with others, and to be able to understand oneself as well, and understand what they bring to the table, and be very attuned with other people's input and needs as well. So the collaborative aspect breaks into two aspects, and that will be the collaboration with like peers, as you're working, and also the
Mhm.
mentorship aspect of it, just having somebody that you can lean on or come for advice or somebody that is just looking out for your best interests and and guiding you, and it shortens the learning curve in a lot of ways. So that collaborative aspect of things also accelerates the development of emerging leaders.
Yeah, I think that's a great model, and thank you for sharing some of those insights. And the product of that is is a leader. So what are some of those really important characteristics that of leaders that come out of those programs? I think you kind of touched on it pretty deep in depth, but I'm just curious if you have any other insights.
Well, I think that the nice thing about a program like this is that it is not putting anyone in a box.
Yeah.
So a person goes into this program and is put in environments that are going to stimulate their development in
Yeah.
whichever way this person finds, their niche in. So you will find where you're more passionate about, you will find your leadership style, and you will be influenced by a wide array of leadership styles. So you will not be stuck thinking, this is the way things are and this is the way I should be. So it helps you see other cultures, working cultures, and really try out what works for you and what doesn't, because every person is going to be different. At the end of the day, what you will have is people that are more that have a lot of accountability, ownership, and that care for the success, the collective success of the
Mhm.
company, not just of their own work and not just of their own department. So that's just a few of the benefits that I could probably point out, but there are just so many. And um, like I said, everybody will develop in their own way. So that's the nice thing about it. Is this is not a workshop training where you are, conceptually learning the concepts of leadership development and then you forget the next day. And it's not a coaching environment. I am not a coach. It is I am good at helping you create those environments where I know you're going to be stimulated and where I know that you have the freedom to move around and spend your wings.
Yeah, and I think it's also good, not everybody has the luxury of being part of a rotational program, but those characteristics are really good characteristics for everybody to think about and reflect on that's listening. If you're just working and you are not in a rotational program, it is important to have that level of accountability with success and the other things that you've described. I think that those are just in general great bits of advice and things for people to take away. Do you have any other general advice other than go into a rotational program? Any other general advice? Unless you want to just talk more about the pitch the rotation programs further, but anything else for a young engineer or somebody that's thinking about going into engineering?
Yes, definitely. So one of the things that I would say is very important is don't be afraid to put yourself out there. As a matter of fact, like you gotta be in the driver's seat of your career. Nobody else is gonna do that for you. Don't wait for somebody to come and just show you the ropes and tap you on the shoulder. Showing initiative makes a huge difference. It,
Mhm.
it definitely shows others that you're worth investing their time into, and it's just great once you put yourself out there just to see what all the options are available for you as well. I think that's very important. So that would be my best advice, just for many reasons. One, the exposure that you get, and just being able to have access to those mentors that could guide you in your career. And just the other aspect of it is to just get out there and find out what your true passion is. Because when you find something you're passionate about, when you go to work, you're going to be that much more productive and that much happier. So that's what I would say.
I think that's phenomenal advice, and that's something that I talk to peers and other people that are early on in their careers, and you sit over a drink and you talk and you vent about work, and you're like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm not getting promoted, or I'm not doing this. I'm like, well, are you advocating for it? What are you doing to advocate for yourself? Are you seeking out mentors and people that can give you advice on how to navigate those internal
Mm-hmm.
politics within your company? Are you seeking out people that have sway in your organization that can help you advocate for you? Are you having those candid conversations with your manager about how what you want to do next? And because they can't read your mind. They can't, I mean, they can
Right.
do their best, but like you said, you own your own career development. You are your biggest advocate. You're always going to be your strongest advocate. So putting yourself
Mm-hmm.
out there is just so crucial to career development. And I will 100% say that the way that my career has gone so far is as much so, maybe not exactly as much, but it's definitely up there with that my work product is being an advocate for myself. Advocating for
Yeah.
myself and my work product go hand in hand for my personal career development. And I think that people need to realize that if they don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess another thing that goes hand in hand with that too is emotional intelligence. So it's more and more important now for employers to
Mhm.
promote emotionally intelligent people. So it's no longer a, who has the higher GPA, who has the highest cognitive intelligence. In order to promote and to have somebody either be a leader or even just lead your projects,
Mhm.
they are putting a lot more importance in your aptitudes and emotional intelligence. So that is something that I include also in my program for that reason, because I feel like as engineers, at the focus of our studies were on cognitive intelligence, and to complement those skills and to really make us well-rounded and high potential employees, the emotional intelligence aspect of it really can give us a leg up in the industry and field. So.
Yeah, so tell me more about that. So for those that don't know, what
Mhm.
is emotional intelligence, and then what have you done to kind of add that to what your suite is? Have you done any certifications or any
Yeah.
research? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So there are a couple of models out there for emotional intelligence, and the one that I like is the EQI 2.0, because it breaks them down into very actionable categories. And a couple of those categories, one of them is, I believe, is stress management and
Mhm.
decision. The other one is decision making. So they're very, very actionable and very easy to understand for people like us, like engineers and technical people, because we know what to do with something like that.
Yeah.
Right, it's not as subjective anymore, so the EQI 2.0 model is what I'm certified on, administering the assessment
Mhm.
and also debriefing on the report results and providing guidance. So, and as far as the program goes, that is one of the things that are key in my program because of that exact same reason. One
Mhm.
of the assessments that we would take would be an emotional intelligence assessment for all the
Mhm.
engineers in the program, and then that helps kind of pinpoint the different areas that they have opportunities for development that will make a
Mhm.
big difference, because that's something else that I didn't have when I was going through the program I did. And eventually you learn, but learning the hard way is very hard. When you learn, that I should have talked that way instead of this way, or I should have managed this situation this way instead of that other way. Um, it's it You learn it the hard way, but it would take you longer and it'd be more painful than taking a scientifically validated assessment that kind of gives you an introduction or an idea at least of what those areas are where you may need some improvement, so
Mhm.
that you use that as a tool when you get out there and start interacting more with people and start discovering more about yourself. It really helps you um, navigate those challenges a lot more effectively.
And I can see a lot of value in that because we grow because we get feedback. And you're not always going to get the feedback, right? Sometimes somebody is just
Mhm.
going to take the interaction and they're going to just internalize the way they feel about it. And not everybody is as good of a colleague or coworker to immediately give you feedback in the way that you need to receive it in that moment. So I feel like it's so valuable to have standards and goals and do that internal reflection and have
Hmm.
an idea of what you're working on so that that way you have that framework that you can look back on it. That's the same reason why I do Toastmasters, because I have
Hmm.
that internal framework that I reference back on whenever I speak. Like whenever I say an or an ah or a you
Hmm.
know in the middle of a conversation, that little bell that somebody annoyingly rings during a Toastmasters meeting is going off in the back of my head. And I imagine that a similar philosophy kind of applies in whenever you're dealing with
The
the
emotional
assessment.
intelligence.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely goes back to awareness,
Hmm.
self-awareness, self-expression, interpersonal relationships, um, decision making, stress tolerance. So those are the five categories of the EQI 2.0 model. So it definitely starts with self-awareness. If you are not self-aware, or if you just overlook the importance of self-awareness,
Hmm.
then nothing else is gonna work out. Nothing else is gonna go well, because you may be acting without really being in touch with what you even want to begin with. And when you're
Hmm.
having conversations with people trying to collaborate, you need to know what you want out of that conversation, or,
Yeah.
even if it's for a project or whatever that may be. So
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm really glad that you got to share that, and I think that Minett Consulting is such a cool company that you started, and you do some really valuable things. So, your website is Minett consulting.com. How else can people get in touch with you?
well, I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So if they want to find me on LinkedIn, Carla Minett, or you can find my company as well, Minett Consultant LLC, on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect. Like I said, I like to stay pretty active with the community, with the engineering community. It's definitely something that I like to do very often, because it helps me stay attuned with the needs and the current challenges that are being faced. As a consultant, I like to stay in touch with those topics. So I don't
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being a part of that community and for being somebody that comes onto this podcast and is willing to share your experience and your insights. I think that people will find the things that we talked about today very valuable. Before we close out, do you have any other last bits of advice or anything else that you want to share? The mic is yours, hot mic. You have the floor.
Thank you, Daniel. I think you asked some excellent questions, and you led the conversation so smoothly, and you had some very good. Your curiosity really led us to dive deeper too into the topics that we're touching on. So you covered it. We're good.
Thank you. Yeah,
Unless
and you
you
did.
have any other questions.
No, I don't. You knocked it out the park. So thank you so much for joining the podcast. I will close out now and then I'll record my outro to go right after this.
Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And that was the Engineering Success Podcast. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Carla. I know I did. It was just an absolute blast. I enjoyed it a lot. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a review. The best way to support the podcast is to leave us 5-star reviews. If you leave us a 5-star review, I will read it out at the beginning of next week's podcast. And if you leave us the other way you can help us out is just by engaging, comment in the comment section down if you're watching on YouTube, share it on your favorite social media platform. We are trying to engineer better careers together. So share it to an engineer or somebody that just wants a better career. Anybody in that mind would really, I think, benefit from this podcast. So thank you for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you hopefully next week. Bye.
I miscommunicating. I just made a pilot, then they threw me on the stations. Nah, I'm not complaining. Nah, I'm not complaining. My thoughts get complicated. I cannot explain in lameness. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries. Thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather.